There's a movement happening in the country known as the National Constitutional Convention, with undertones similar to that of the Brexit vote in Great Britain. Supporters like to call it a convention of states, which sounds less threatening, but the differentiation is a difference without a distinction. The concept on the surface has merit, with honest objectives by the many supporters. But there's another side to this idea that has concerning parallels to a liberal Trojan horse movement, heavily funded by the usual list of ultra-liberal suspects. The concept of a convention of states is outlined under Article 5 of the Constitution, which says the Constitution can be amended in two ways: by a two-thirds vote of the United States Congress or by 33 states' legislatures. Once the legislatures agree to have a convention, the proposed amendments will be drafted by somebody for presentation to all the states through their legislatures. At least 38 legislatures must agree to these amendments in order to have the amendments be part of the Constitution. There will be several amendments proposed, with each needing a vote of at least 38 states. When 38 states approve any amendment, it becomes part of the law and part of our Constitution. It is a very difficult barrier to cross, but it does put new amendments in place where Congress, the Supreme Court, and the President are not able to stop, but is very difficult to unwind. This is a very unusual process because it takes the power away from the federal government to make these amendments. The movement considers our nationally elected officials and Supreme Court as part of the problem, because they lack the political courage to fix any problem that are not permitted under the Constitution. This lack of trust exists because it is felt politicians are self-serving and not doing what's best for the country. To this point, the convention sounds like a good idea, but the next step is where the devil is in the details. These proposed amendments are designed to address concerns that are adversely affecting the country as seen by the activists writing these proposals. On the surface, this idea sounds valid, with the issues topping the list being national debt, term limits, and gun control. The problem is, this will not be the entire list, in spite of claims to the contrary. This is a convention to discuss possible changes, after all, and they will not let this opportunity pass. The procedures followed at this point will be determined by human nature, with no other controlling body. The opportunity to revise the Constitution happens once in a lifetime, and to expect the proposed changes to be limited to the list issued above is very unlikely. The proposals will come from a collection of political activists who will gather in some sort of forum to rewrite parts of the Constitution starting with the above list, but will very likely involve issues like gender identity, electoral college, tax law, electronic monitoring, immigration, and not to mention those items involved in political correctness and situational ethics. I addressed the national debt, term limits, and gun control in past commentaries, with the common denominator of those advocating these changes all having a common desire for a more activist approach to running the government. The difference between liberals and conservatives is, liberals want revisions as soon as possible without fully considering the unintended consequences, and don't seem to care about the cost because it's not their money. Conservatives, on the other hand, are inclined to stay with the system that got us to this point, realizing changes for change's sake only address the symptom and is not a way to solve problems. The movement has all the markings of proposals that have a liberal activist in nature. A convention of states will not solve any of the country's problems. The machinery to make these changes already exists. The problem is a lack of integrity by the lawmakers, with the best interests of the country secondary. Their interest as a politician is that they like it the way it is now. The temptation by delegates to use this opportunity to revise more provisions in our founding document will be overwhelming. The process of a convention is very protracted, intricate, and expensive, and will more likely evolve into more chaos than any constructive machinery to make things better, and possibly start a civil war with the media willing to fan the flames. The solution to the national debt is to run the country like a business, by investing tax dollars instead of spending them. The solution to have incompetent senior citizens in government is to vote them out and stop the apathy of the citizens that continue to re-elect them. The answer to the gun legislation is to print millions of gun-free zone signs and have every building in the country required to post it at their front door. Like that will really work. Democracy is the best of all the terrible alternatives, with the only possible outcome being answers that are perfectly mediocre, with the elected officials only slightly better than the average citizen. Jesus Christ would have difficulty winning an election without name recognition. The irony is, any system, even socialism or communism, would work if there was no cheating or hypocrisy. The problem is a lack of integrity by those elected to manage. Putting more restrictions or amendments will only become an arms race, with politicians finding ways to circumvent the system to allow corruption to continue. Until there is an active incentive for the elected managers to be fair, honest, and have integrity and do it sustainably, a convention of states will accomplish little, with a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. It will be a media event with more money spent on this than any political campaign, with a likelihood of improving anything 50-50 at best, with any changes very difficult to reverse. This is Keith Kube wishing you the best in making the world a better place.